Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Monday, July 8th, 2019 meeting of the Select Board, Town of Montague. Topics may start earlier than specified unless there is a hearing scheduled. The meeting is being taped and recorded by MCTV. Is there anyone in the audience who is taping? You may do so, just let us know, and votes may be taken. I'm Rich Kuklewicz.
Chris Boutwell and Mike Nelson, we're the Montague Select Board.
I'm Steve Ellis, Town Administrator.
Wendy Bogus, Executive Assistant.
Okay. First, our approval of minutes of June 17th and 24th. Did we get a chance to look through those? I think 24th came today, I think.
This afternoon. Motion to approve the minutes of June 17th, 2019. Second.
Motion's made and seconded for June 17th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to accept the meeting minutes of June 24th, 2019 with one minor correction. Under the appointees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eighth bullet point down, there's an appointment of Rich, and you had abstained on it, and it just says that you had voted in favor, so just correct that to abstain.
Good. Okay, any other comments? So a motion to approve the minutes with minor correction. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So voted unanimous. Okay, anybody for public comments? All right. Mark Johnson, Mark's Auto, 44 Federal Street, come around right now. Hi.
Hi there.
Okay, so I think you were here at a meeting that I was unable to attend. This is a continuing discussion, I think, on a request for selling automobiles.
Yeah, Class 2 license.
Okay.
And if the board would like, Wendy and I did some research. We met with Mark in between that meeting and this one. I don't know if you'd like us to sort of give you a quick summary overview.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Sure.
where we left off is there was some unclear commentary as to whether we were looking for one type of license or another, and how many cars and such. So
Right. So, I mean, a few other things came to light following that conversation. And we involved Mike Brown, the water superintendent, in conversation, because this, as was referenced, I think by Mr. Jenks at that meeting, is in a water supply protection district.
Okay.
It is a pre-existing The Water Supply Protection District was enacted as part of the bylaws in 1991. We have permits for a Class 2 license dating back previous to that period of time. And so fundamentally, the boundaries then are that it is protected as a pre-existing use, but it can't expand upon that use.
Right.
One of the salient questions that emerged from our last conversation was whether Mark should be seeking a Class 2 license or a Class 2 and Class 3 license. The question of whether he was junking and scrapping, and in fact, I left the conversation, and Wendy, I think, can chime in as well, very clearly, if you could expand on this a bit, I think, if you would, Mark, that it is a Class 2 license, that there's no long-term junks that are to be sitting there, and that he's not scrapping them. It was our determination that granting of the license with similar conditions to previous made sense, was what he was legally entitled to, and would not expand upon the hazardous conditions. In fact, we think overall his taking ownership of the property is probably remedying some other problems that were on it. And so what you're going to see before you today is a proposition to grant that license, Class 2 license, a total of 35 vehicles, and that was 15 out front, 20 in the back, I believe.
Actually, I think it was yeah.
We talked about buses that are there full of parts, which Mark intends to get rid of over the long term. He's waiting for scrap rates to change.
They may actually be gone this week.
Okay.
I've contacted the salvage guy, and we're getting rid of, there's some other scrap that was there on the premises, actually quite a bit, which I have a roll-off there right now, which is, a load gonna go, probably
Right.
this week. And the buses may go this week, but if not, certainly within the next few weeks,
Okay,
they're,
that's
they're
great.
gonna go.
On the license, those would show up to the extent they still exist, if the board granted this today, as counting towards his vehicle count while they're there, as would any vehicles that have been there that aren't his property, that have been there for very long term. Because if those owners can't be identified, those vehicles count. And one of the things that that Superintendent Brown requested, that Mark was willing to accommodate, was an annual announced inspection to make sure there isn't any undue leakage or anything that would pose a damage to the water supply that would be written into the permit. So those are the lots of conversations boil down into that, and I can let others speak now.
Just to clarify, gentlemen, there is a building in front of this row of cars.
Right, I was gonna ask where the
It
buildings
shows up
were.
on this map, but the photocopy
Okay,
just didn't,
so like this.
just
And
didn't
this
collect
is,
that
and
color.
this is the road right here?
No, the road
Road
is
is-
actually up here.
Okay.
That's, Mr. Jenks's driveway,
That's, oh, okay, that's the
right up
driveway.
there, yeah,
Okay,
Mhm.
got it.
Yep.
And this is Federal Street,
that is, yes.
so the house kind, or the building is
The
kinda
building's
like
in there,
this.
sure. Mhm.
Okay.
So when you're looking at
And
this.
there is a house further. right here. House kind of
Quite, the house is quite a ways
Quite a
down,
ways, okay.
Dick Stone's house.
You'll notice on this map that there are little, like, crossouts on a number of the vehicles in the middle of the page. That was based on the assumed loss of capacity, based on the buses that were in the back of the lot.
Right, and this is the blue,
Big blue
Big blue
building.
building.
Yes, it is. Yep,
so you're looking to have kind of some vehicles out front that'll be for sale,
yes,
and you're gonna run repairs in here, is that?
yes, that's correct.
You're gonna run repairs? There were always vehicles on that property, I think even much larger construction vehicles for quite a long time.
Well, that's what Paul Stone repaired, was big stuff.
Used to be Max trucks.
Yeah, sure. And I still will be repairing some equipment and stuff, but probably mostly cars.
Okay.
Maybe just because there was confusion at the last meeting, you can speak to the fact that you aren't going to be maintaining any junk vehicles long-term on the property. They would be sort of pass-through vehicles.
Yes.
Can you talk a bit about
Yes.
that?
Yeah, well, where the confusion was, in the used car business, we always get some vehicles that come in that I'm not gonna resell to the general public. You know, they're rusty, they're just incapacitated vehicles. You get a few of those, but those are they're still vehicles for sale. I'm just gonna move them on. I'm not in the junk business, or anything like that,
You're not gonna strip them or anything?
I'm not gonna strip them, I'm not gonna sell them to the general public, though. I would sell them to another junkyard, or a junkyard, or
somebody come and take them?
or a junk man would come and get them, that type of thing. I think that's where the confusion was last time, was there.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I'll just note that I think the last meeting, Mr. Jenks had expressed that his big concern was that there not suddenly be a reproliferation of vehicles. And he didn't express particular concerns relative to this plan. He wanted to make sure that things did not get out of hand again. I think I'm accurately expressing his sentiments.
I did
at the previous
actually,
meeting.
he did actually stop in a couple days ago, and he actually thanked me for doing what I said I would do.
That's great.
That's good. Okay. Jeff?
I just had a couple quick questions.
Sure.
Mark, not to drag this out. Sorry. Last time, as I recall, you said you might use buses for storage, you're not gonna do that anymore.
No,
What exactly, what is it, I didn't really catch, like class 3, you're not gonna get a class 3, what is a class 3?
A class 3 license is to junk cars, sell parts, strip cars, that type of thing.
But at the end, you said you were going to have some rusted ones that you might sell to the junk person. I guess I'm not asking.
A junk license, you would have vehicles there for long-term.
Oh.
They might be there for years. What I'm doing is they're gonna move quickly, they're not gonna be there. They might be there a little while, but not long.
And it's the water district, Steve, that does this annual inspection?
Yes, Superintendent Brown will have the right to perform an annual inspection.
Okay, any other questions?
Make a motion to authorize a used car dealer's license class 2 to Mark's Auto, 484 Federal Street in Montague Center for 20 vehicles in front, 15 vehicles in back behind the building, with the notes that buses or former vehicles used for storage are included in that total count, as are any other vehicles left on the property long-term by other parties, as well as the Turners Falls Water Department having the right to annual announced inspections.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So vote unanimous. Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have Bruce Hunter.
Good evening.
Bruce,
How are you?
good, Rudders Park.
Yes, we have a invoice authorization to disperse. We have 2 invoices from Emmy O'Brien. One is for the picnic tables and benches, which were delivered to the site last week, and the pavilion, which was also delivered to the site last week, for a total of $33,319.98. Leaves $40,807 to be billed, and that's mostly for the poured-in-place rubber surface.
So things are looking good there. I'll have to make an effort to get by.
Things are progressing.
Progressing, okay. The estimated completion?
We believe that we should have the pavilion up by the end of July, first part of August. Then there's a planting season where they have to wait to plant. So end of September is the target date. Yeah.
Good, all right.
Motion to authorize disbursement number 2, which is invoice number I190690-IN to M.E. O'Brien and Sons in the amount of $33,319.98 in regards to Rudders Park Improvement Project.
I will second that.
Could I?
Yeah, I just,
Second,
Yeah.
Yeah, and to clarify, that motion also includes invoice number I190726-IN.
I'll second that.
Great, motion's made and seconded to authorize the disbursement. Any other discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So
Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow, Wendy. Well, there's one other.
Yes,
Last week you approved the payment the payment documentation's here for you to sign tonight.
oh,
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, we'll let Aaron, but not very far ahead. Aaron McLean and Suzanne.
Yeah, so,
Oh, yes.
we received a note from Aaron McLean asking that we withdraw that. Apparently, the event would have conflicted with other events that would have made it complicated,
Oh,
so
okay. Okay,
they hope to do it next year.
okay, so we're 5 minutes ahead. Okay, Walter Ramsey.
Good evening.
Hi, Walter.
So the first item I'm here tonight is to request the board to execute a letter to the Consulate General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, specifically to request participation in what they call a twinning program, where essentially Turners Falls or Montague would be paired up with a small village in Trinidad, and we would set up essentially a cultural exchange where we'd exchange art projects and all sorts of educational programs, things like that. Nothing really formal. It's kind of an informal connection that we would have to a neighboring community. So the reason why we got connected with Trinidad and Tobago is one of Montague's businesses, Fab Designs. Richie Richardson is from Trinidad and Tobago, and he started up this Fashion Passion show last year, and he was looking for resources to give it a little bit of a boost for this year coming up, and he reached out to his consulate, and they liked the idea of the Fashion Passion. They wanted to support that, but they also had an idea of supporting the community of Turner's Falls and kind of the creative arts thing that we've got going on. So they're talking about connecting us with particularly a village in Port of Spain, the largest city in Trinidad, that is their kind of arts district. And in order to start this whole process of twinning, it starts with a request to initiate the process to the consulate, and then he can kind of help us make that connection. So the consulate actually came out a couple weeks ago and met with some business owners and residents, and they really liked the community, so they invited the town to submit this letter.
What's the difference, if any, between twinning and sister cities?
It's
the same
essentially
thing,
the same
different
thing.
wording.
Yeah, it might be a little bit less formal than sister cities.
And there's no requirement for us to send Suzanne to Trinidad and Tobago.
There absolutely is not. There's
She may be hoping.
there's no formal travel exchanges as part of this. No.
Motion authorize the chair to sign off on the letter to the consulate of Trinidad and Tobago regarding twinning Village of Turner's Falls with their community.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So voted unanimous.
I think Michael is most likely to go there someday.
I'm on it.
Okay, next is Strathmore abatement procurement.
So, a few weeks ago, this board signed a grant agreement with Mass Development for the abatement of the Strathmore Mill Complex, $250,000, and this is kind of implementation of that grant. This $58,000 would be to hire Ty and Bond to finalize the bid-ready specifications, to manage the bidding process for the town, and to do construction oversight. So they'll be on site making sure that the contractor is doing what they're set out to do, and finally preparing the closeout documentation that is critical for when you do a cleanup project, so that we have a clean bill of health. And that covers their aspect. And then, yeah, we will later go out to bid for the actual contractor's work, but we need to hire them to get to that point.
So the $250,000 is the amount of money we have, unless we supplement it with some local match.
Yeah.
Is there a plan for that to supplement it, or? I would just look at the percentage of the engineering of 58,000 and wonder what the total cost of the project will be, and where engineering and design and all that are related. Like right now, it's 20% of the project is just engineering costs.
Well,
Roughly,
the cleanup is more than 250,000. It's I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was in like the $400,000 range. So it is
we
going
have 250 of a grant. We have other money that the town allocated to do cleanup, I believe.
through
right?
through the debt exclusion from a few years ago now.
So the project total with then the grant plus what we've got for debt exclusion right now, how much money would there potentially be already allocated toward that project? Was that debt exclusion, how much was that?
The debt exclusion was for $385,000, and that in theory would cover the entire project, the 385, and so the 250 is coming off of that.
Off
So
of 385?
yeah, so essentially the 250 is coming out of what the town would otherwise pay through that debt exclusion
So it's like a
project.
$400,000
It is
project,
almost,
yeah.
yeah. Roughly speaking, 40, yeah, we don't know exactly.
And we have roughly 600 allocated between the town meeting and the,
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've already
up to that
spent
amount.
some of the $385,000 appropriation. Some of that went in as match on the CDBG grant that designed the demolition and abatement. It's important for you to know that there's portions of the building that were not included in that abatement plan.
Right.
Buildings 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, and 4,
Yep.
I believe.
So they have to go out and do some additional
I just don't know how much money we
assessments.
spend for engineering
Yeah.
fees, and I know it's expensive, and I know it's specialized, but, it just seems like the percentages are really high. And
Yeah.
I understand that it's important, and I understand Ty and Bond is a good engineering firm for this type of work. Just seems, my comment is it's expensive, and it gets to be a large percentage of the projects. Maybe I'll avoid it.
I do want to add, the project management and supervision is a big deal as well. It's sort of the ongoing engineering, but it's also the accountability and due diligence to make sure that the firm that actually does the removal is doing it to spec. And things like the procurement are additional cost elements beyond the engineering and design.
And who will manage Ty and Bond? Quite like the last project, kind of, Franklin, regional housing with Bruce managed them, and he's quite good at that, it appears to me. Are we going to manage Ty and Bond services in-house, or are we going
Yes.
to?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
who will that be internally? Will it be somebody like the building inspector or you? or-
Typically with me, I managed them when we did the Building 10 debris cleanup project. That was almost a $300,000 project, similar to this.
All right.
And half of their fee here is construction administration, because they have to be on site during the construction. That's,
I'm not saying
the
that
actual
they're-
engineering's pretty small, but
Just having people on
it's
it.
the on-site that's.
All right. Do we have any other thoughts or questions?
I just wanna note that, and I think Steve started to note that, this isn't for a complete, hazardous material removal. It's as much as we can do, but that there is still stuff
Yeah.
left behind, so.
Things like, go ahead.
Like roofing and windowsills, it looks like some
Right.
stuff, so, I assume any money we don't spend out of that allocation, we'll just keep in there for future, when the time comes for future, remediation.
To the extent we can, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe the town meeting, the debt exclusion was for interior abatement
Oh, was it?
material. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Alright, make a motion to execute the contract, with time bond in the amount of $58,000 for the Strathmore Complex Abatement Project Procurement and Oversight Project.
I will second that.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Jeff?
Yeah, I'm having trouble understanding this. I really am, truly. The project is 250 plus 385? If they're gonna be.
The total amount of resources that we have available, okay, would be sort of attributed to two pots of money. The $250,000 grant from the state, recently received, and a $385,000 appropriation from town meeting that actually predates my tenure, of which a portion has been spent. I believe the balance is in the vicinity of $300,000, if I'm
More than that, it's like 360-ish.
360-ish, okay, sorry. So the budget, we're not looking to spend to budget per se, we're looking to spend for the cost of the abatement. And we can only abate as much as the fact that we're not demolishing the building and can't take the roofs and all the windows out of it will allow us. So there's significant sources of hazardous materials to be abated, but we can only go as far as, where the
Yeah.
building is at.
Yeah.
And Jeff, the
Can take
scope
us.
of work that is in this proposal, which we can give you a copy of,
Can I have a copy of that?
yes, will give you a better understanding. Michael pointed out a few things in there. And then Walter could answer other questions offline if you need him to.
Yeah, but
Okay.
this is to implement the debt exclusion that was approved, I think, 3 years ago now.
It's a little
But
confusing
the
because-
town got $250,000, so that's, the taxpayers don't have to bear that burden
It's a
anymore.
little confusing because in the governor's announcement, and I haven't read your original proposal for the 250 grand, but in the governor's announcement, it said that they were gonna be abating buildings that are gonna remain standing that are going to be for reuse. And that gave me the impression, are we abating the stuff that's gonna be torn down, that 2 million, multi-million dollar tear down with some of this money too?
So,
It was unclear to me which buildings are being abated, but if this gives me a better understanding, and I can call you and talk tomorrow.
yeah, I'd be happy to.
You understand my confusion?
Sure.
Yeah. Right, because there is that other level.
Okay, next would be, we have to vote, yes. Next we have to vote. All right, so there's a motion on the floor to execute the contract, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, anything else for us tonight, Walter?
That's it. I would just put in a little plug for the Miller's Falls. We're doing a strategic plan for the village center. And they're having their first public meeting coming up next week on Thursday at 6. This is next Thursday. It's at the Covenant Church in Miller's Falls Village Center. And I would encourage anybody that's interested. You don't have to be from Miller's to attend the meeting. I don't think any residents from Montague. Anybody with an interest in Miller's can come.
That would be great. And is there going to be any kind of other public notices or anything in the village that might get people?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of outreach in social media.
Okay. Thank you, Walter. Next we have the Tree Advisory Committee. I think I saw David come on in, so come on down.
Oh, yeah?
10 minutes, David.
Okay. Well, we have a number of items before you.
Yes.
One of them is to extend the grant for planting 32 trees in Miller's Falls. Is that on the agenda tonight?
The
The first one on the agenda is the Community Forestry Challenge Grant, yep.
So that, we just came very close to succeeding to get 32 trees into the ground over the last 2 years with the help of the tech school to a great extent. Both their nursery and their students were very helpful. We still have 4 trees that we're watering, hoping to find a good spot for them, but there are very few spots left on the tree belts in Miller's. And so we'd like a little bit of an extension, and DCR's been willing to grant it. We also had promised to put educational tags on each of the trees, and we haven't yet had a chance to do that because we've been so busy with the planting of the other 800 trees that are coming to town. The first 2 batches of those, we've been working with the tree warden to get those in the ground. So if we had a couple more weeks to complete the the tags for the 28 trees that are in the ground and to find spots for the other 4, we can get that grant complete to DCR's satisfaction. So we hope the select board will sign off on that extension.
Well, that's not the one we had. I don't
We have
think
something
it's
from-
for $2,000.
This was around the Montague Wood Bank.
Roberta brought
Oh,
it
it's a
in.
different one, huh?
There is something about the tree belt planting.
But
Okay.
but the
Extension she brought to me
extension,
because it had to be done by June 30th.
and so did we get that signed?
That's handled.
That's all handled?
Yeah.
My apologies.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that
this one
was
was
just
one that was sent to
administrative.
Walter
Mhm.
regarding the,
Montague Wood Bank Improvement Project.
And this is to purchase a wood splitter, as I understand it, so that we'll have our own. Montague will own one, and that'll allow the operations of the wood bank to go more smoothly in time to come.
Excellent.
okay, and where will that be maintained when the wood bank is not using it?
That'll be up to the DPW and the tree warden, who work pretty closely with us on that. I'm not
Okay.
sure of the
So
location.
the DPW in some fashion? Okay,
Yep.
all right.
All right, make a motion to approve and execute the Department of Conservation and Recreation, Urban and Community Forestry Challenge Grant in the amount of $2,000 and authorize the chair to sign off on all the contract forms.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then I guess one of the main things we're bringing to you tonight, there's 2 or 3 other items, but the main thing is that for 2 years or more, the committee as a whole has been working to get a draft municipal tree bylaw to you.
Can we,
Yep.
can we go in order, what about tree belt planting?
Okay.
In Montague Center in Miller's Falls?
Let's
I know
do that next.
Mr. Soika has a couple of concerns with Miller's Falls.
Well,
Let's try to get that discussion going. What are your plans for Montague Center
Well, I think-
plantings?
let's talk about Montague Center then. We have planted, Michael's better at this because he lives in the village, but the lack of public parking in Montague Center, particularly around the Grange, and now with a concert coming up coincident with the Old Home Days, has us worried that people's habit of parking on the tree belts in Montague Center, because of a lack of public parking, is going to endanger the new trees that have been planted. So maybe Michael could speak briefly to that.
Yeah, it's sort of a free-for-all system in Montague Center with parking. There's cars everywhere on public land anytime they feel like it. One thing I think can be looked at for some parking is opposite the mini mart, all the way down to the church. The breakdown lane, if you want to call it that, was pushed very close to the mini mart, so that the one on the opposite side of the mini mart is huge now. And I'm wondering if the Greenfield model, you know how downtown Greenfield is, if we could maybe entertain putting slant-in parking. I think you could probably get 15 spaces or so in there at least. Obviously, people would have to back out, but they back out on a way busier road in Greenfield than Montague Center. So, I mean, that's one possibility, or something at the playground. But essentially, I mean, this Woodstock thing was approved, and I'm told there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of people on the same day as Old Home Days. And we've already had trouble with people parallel parking right between.
I think they have a different parking plan though for that event.
That's good.
That I thought I saw some, when Kathy was here, Steve helped me with that, or Mike or somebody, that I think she had like 3 designated kind of parking
They were gonna use
areas.
the Montague Center Park, they were gonna use behind the mini mart.
And you don't think that people are going to tend to park on the tree belt until it's full up before they
Oh, of
go to
course
the...
they are.
So that's, we're wondering whether we couldn't rope it off just as an experiment, to try to teach people that parking their cars on tree belts is damaging to the trees. And again, Michael could tell you more about the science behind that, but
Sure.
if you put a heavy piece of equipment, like a truck or a car, right on top of the root system of a brand new tree or even a mature tree, it damages the tree and shortens its life expectancy.
I mean, Mark, the tree warden, has told me there's places where he's planted trees where they've almost had to jackhammer to get the tree in. And I said, then what about 2 feet away from that? He said, oh, we don't deal with that. That's as hard as a rock. So you're essentially planting a tree in a pot and expecting it to grow 30 feet.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen because the compression is permanent. There are times when it's rained and it's 3 days later and the tree belt is still under 3 inches of water because
It's
it's
not percolating.
no, because it's so
So I
packed.
think that one of the things in Montague Center would be to have the DPW potentially and the police chief look at some thoughts on better
Parking.
arrangement of parking. If we want to keep people off the tree belt, we have to come up with a plan that provides adequate parking for the events, and then denotes where you're not allowed to park with some sort of signage. And that's a little bit of a, I think, a research project and multidisciplinary.
I mean, I've stopped some people, and one of the things people say is that it doesn't say you can park on the street,
Right.
like on Center. Well, you can. So instead, they pull in the tree belt to get off the street. But there is legal parking, but there's no signs at all. And if you're not from in town, you're scared to death to
So I
park.
think that would be a first step is let's ask to have Tom and maybe Chief Williams take a little look at that, see what they have for thoughts.
How many trees have been planted recently in the tree belts in Montague Center, just for the select board's information?
Somewhere between 15 and 20.
So we got brand new trees and we want to protect them as well. So it's a concern about the timing of events about to occur. So I totally agree that it's something we should look at carefully with the police and the DPW, but maybe they could report back to you before Old Home Days and see if anything could be done this season.
Do you want to add the fire chief to the Montague Center to the list? Because parking
Sure.
cars on some streets is going to make it narrow for the trucks
Sure,
to
we
get through.
need to look at what makes sense.
What's possible.
There may be, I think that just starts the discussion.
That's right.
Mhm.
I mean, we may even need to go as far as a more formal study to really have a good plan if we
Mhm.
want, if we wanna make a major change. And so I think we just take a step at a time
Agreed.
and figure out. But I do agree, I drive by and there are people parked way up on the edges and then,
On the common,
Every
on the
time there's an
baseball
event,
field.
every time there's an event at the Grange, whereas maybe they could work something out with the church, which only uses its parking lot once or twice a week.
Okay.
You know, instead of parking basically on that whole curve,
all right, okay.
it's just,
I-
we've
I
got,
would-
we've got parking in other villages, but we don't seem to have designated parking in Montague Center.
I would note too, it just came to mind that Tom is looking to pave that whole area starting the end of July. So if he's gonna be painting lines, this actually is the perfect time to do it before he paints those fresh lines.
Well, if you could reach out to him
I
next
will.
day.
He's on
so-
vacation.
Yeah, he's away this week,
Is that, so
so.
next week, okay,
Thank you.
all right.
And in Miller's Falls, what we, you know, we understand there's opposition to the idea. We had to basically unpave a short section of the tree belt at the corner of Newton and Franklin.
That's
as
this,
a demonstration of basically
It's
10, right, it's basically 10 to 15%, we estimate, of the tree belts have been paved in Miller's Falls over the last 60, 70 years. We don't know how long ago, that some of these buildings once had commercial uses, which they no longer enjoy. Yet the tree belts remain paved over. And it's just, that village is really at the verge of a real turnaround. People are really investing in some of those properties, obviously, as you know, and new businesses are starting up. To add to that, to bring greenery and shade to the village center, which is characterized by an awful lot of hard surfaces, bricks and pavement, and very little greenery, we'd wondered if the select board would let the town planner and work with us a little bit to look at the long-term use of those old tree belts, which, you know, other villages have not paved over their tree belts the way Miller's Falls has.
so you're well, I wouldn't say Miller's Falls has paved them over.
Well, we've allowed them to be
They
paved
have been paved over
Yeah.
in Miller's Falls.
in the past.
Probably by some highway department, or, I don't know that, I mean,
It's lost to
there's
history.
people who've lived, well, I don't know that residents ever went there and paved over.
Yeah, I don't
tree
know
belts. I
either,
think-
but this was a long time ago
Right,
that
so what
these
you're talking
yeah.
is, where we see these trees here,
lovely
you're
trees
talking about
in front of
basically
Mr.
extending,
Soika's, right.
extending that to the corner, kind of like,
Right.
almost where that white line is on the,
Not to give up the
photograph.
town's property forever.
Okay.
This was once a tree belt, it has now been paved over, maybe for 60 years or more. But it's not private property, it's not part of the deeded property of the private landowner on the other side of the sidewalk. It's town property. And in the future, would we like to retrieve some of those tree belts? Because you go up Franklin Street and you see the same thing closer to West Main on one side of the street. The tree belts are all paved. And you go around downtown Millers and you see that in several other locations as well.
so your proposal is to put some trees,
Well, we had thought to put two there, to extend the
Newton
tree belt
Street.
right on down, yeah.
nothing on Franklin Street, just on Newton.
Franklin, we've done our best. We've planted everywhere where there's
Okay,
tree belts available, but there are other areas that are paved on Franklin, which
Right.
are town tree belts.
right,
That is true.
okay,
Closer to West Main.
all right.
But, you know, initially, Mr. Soika was supportive of the idea, now he's opposed. We're not concerned about one location as opposed to the others. Perhaps it would be okay, what we'd like to see is whether the select board would allow us again to look at that problem with the town planner and perhaps some of the neighbors and say, what's the future use, best use of what is really town property, not private property? It's been paved. These are tree belts, they're paved over right now, and maybe we could take a year or something, a few months to look at that and say, here's what we recommend. I mean, the tree committee would obviously recommend more greenery.
There's even space near the town hall in Montague Center. There was that bookstore that's been Peter Massey
It used to be a restaurant, actually.
restaurant or something. And that's got like a lot of paving because I think they used to be business.
Okay.
So things haven't, like that were businesses that had gone for decades. Nothing ever got changed on them.
But Miller's is a little more problematic than Montague Center. Montague Center looks like it's got plenty of green space.
Yeah.
Miller's, it's really tough
Yeah.
to find
I think it's hard to
places
tell
to
from
plant trees.
photos and,
Yeah.
so one question would be like, you know, and Mr. Soika points out in his email that he needs to cut very sharp because the street's narrow.
Sure.
And there's parking on the other side of the street. So I think,
Well, this is a distressed corner, you would have to admit, if you saw the other side of the street, and, you know, there's been investment right across the street on Franklin, in that property, and, you know, the tree belt provides not only shade and beauty, but it also enhances property values, and, you know, the generations before have preserved the tree belt in front of Mr. Soika's property. It would be nice to extend that same benefit right down to the corner in time to come. But if there's opposition to that particular location, maybe we should step back and look at the whole problem more generally. Because if you really do look at the tree belts as a whole in Miller's Falls, an awful lot of them have been paved.
all right, Walter, do you have, because we're running over.
I understand.
And I want to keep it.
Well, I would just suggest that since we're engaging in a community strategic plan for Miller's Falls and meeting with residents, if it's possible, I know you have a grant, but it would be nice to kind of put this on hold and float this by at some of the community meetings. If it rises to the top as a priority, is greening the village center.
We're fine with that.
Amongst other priorities.
Okay,
then
that's a
maybe
great
then
idea.
it'd be a good time to revisit this.
Right,
We're
my
fine with
thinking
it.
was, it wasn't, I didn't want to feel like we should be here tonight trying to say, yes, let's dig that pavement up and put trees there, or
Had
no,
there been-
let's not do that.
Had there
Let's-
been agreement, that'd be easy, but now that there's opposition, I would say, let's step back and look at the whole problem, because I think when you do measure it out, there's 10 or 15% of the town tree belt, that's town land, that's been paved over in front of private
Well, it's
residents.
part of I guess, I don't know that it was ever, it's part of the right of way, I would say, from the road, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's officially called, it's part of the right of way.
Yeah.
Apparently, it possibly could have been a tree belt, it may not, who knows? Who really knows? Might be lost history, yes, sir.
Okay, just if I may speak,
Sure.
I am the owner of 15 Newton Street, which is the property that people are interested in taking, essentially. The building long predates the paving of the road and has been, past uses, it was originally built as an adjunct to a factory that was across the street that has subsequently burned down. It was the home of Carroll Trucking. Tractor trailers were parked there. That's been a commercial parking lot forever. There's a flooding problem there. The corner is used as a bus stop by several school buses as well as the Franklin Regional Transit Authority. There's a flooding problem caused by the repeated paving of the road, which raises it a few inches every time they do it. Okay, so it's getting higher and higher, doesn't drain properly. In Old Town drawings, that what appears to be a lawn there is in fact a gravel parking lot, and tractor trailers were parked in it. There's a very thin layer of loam that was put on it, and I've cultivated grass there for sort of neighborhood appearance, but it has existed without curbing for over 100 years. And it's taxed as commercial or industrial property. This is not residential. And it's kind of an odd situation where the building predated the sort of the subdivision of the property, so that around the building, there's about 12 inches around two sides of the building of property. And Mr. Soika's property comes right up to it on the other side. And there's that small commercial parking lot that is disguised under an inch of loam.
And so I would assume, Walter, that, I think this is a great thing to go to those forums and discuss, because town property would presumably extend at least to the edge of the sidewalk.
That's right.
If not potentially a bit further. So it's not about taking anybody's property.
That's right, we're not talking about the other side of the
Well,
sidewalk.
eliminating the access to the parking lot.
Well, no, that we never
Well,
contemplated that.
let's get it to that community planning.
Yep.
And then if there is a consensus there, if otherwise we'll have to discuss it more further. a little bit further, but I think having some people look at it, get some measurements, we can, yes, Mr. Shepherd.
I just want to state that I am not against what David, I think it's a wonderful idea. I'll let my letter speak for itself. I've raised genuine concerns that I think have to be looked at.
Sure.
And I think your idea of starting with a community planning group and going from there makes a lot of sense.
And we'd fully support that.
Okay, great, let's do that. Okay, next is the proposed bylaw.
Right, so again, this has been about 2 years
What's this?
coming to you. This was our initial charge from the select board. We've drawn on documents from Greenfield, Northampton, Amherst, and every other town that we could find locally that had good tree bylaws. And it's just been an awful lot of work. We've gone back and forth with the town administrator and the town planner, and this is the document that we are presenting to you in draft form, I guess, tonight. Our hope is that you'll allow us to move forward with public hearings someday soon in the villages. We really look at this document as a working draft. We want community input. We think of trees as a community investment for the future, and we'd like to protect them, and that's what these bylaws are all about. We'd like to hold hearings in each of the 5 villages and aim to bring these bylaws in finished form to town meeting next spring.
Okay, great. I like the idea, the challenge I have, the one that really I think we need to really be tight on is town planting of trees on private property.
Yep.
So one thing that, when I read through it, was a bit confusing is the end of kind of the first paragraph, it's rather long, goes on to the second page, like,
Go ahead.
at the very end it says, if the town has insufficient funds, the request may be denied or waitlisted. It seemed like that might belong somewhere in the front, because before that you talk about the property owner owns the trees, immediately after planting is responsible for watering, pruning, and other maintenance over the lifespan of the tree. I'm concerned that could be misconstrued as, well, when it dies, the town's responsible to remove it, and even though it says above it, it's not.
Yep.
You know, so I think what the wait listed was about was if there's not enough funds to procure a tree. So I think that just it's a thing of where the things go.
We'll take
The same thing with the no cost share. So
We're not wedded to
the owner
any.
may request a tree at no cost co-share when the original tree dies or needs to be removed. I just think we need to make sure that people understand that if they so choose to have a tree planted by the town on private property, the town is gifting them that tree. And then it becomes their tree as if they planted it themselves, and we need to be clear because
That's fine.
I know the town of Greenfield has struggled with this. They requested people to let them plant trees.
Yep.
So I think the first thing is we need to make sure people request us to plant the trees. And I've even said at other meetings prior to this that there almost needs to be something in the deed that says they own the tree, because again, the city of Greenfield had some challenges when they wanted to plant some trees off the street, because it was probably the better place to plant them, quite frankly.
That's the case
Just like
sometimes.
on Montague Street.
That's the case
It was an issue in
sometimes.
the past couple of years.
Right.
And then 30 years go by, or 20 years go by, the tree's now at end of life or too big for what it was intended. And it's a whole different generation that are saying, oh, that's a town tree.
Yep.
So we just need to be careful how that gets there. And all, I don't know what it is, but to me, something needs to be permanent on that. That's all I would say. Walter?
In Greenfield, they struggled with the same issue, and they're doing the same grant as well. They have a contract that they sign, that the landowner has to sign, acknowledging all this, and the town keeps that on file, and, files get lost.
Right.
We can keep them in multiple places if you want.
Well, that's
But
why
there is a standard kind of process of procedure that's been set up that we can benefit from.
That's why my thinking is it almost needs to be recorded in some fashion somewhere that is then like
It's interesting because
permanent record, you know, not like your permanent high school record. But hey, you know what I'm saying?
it's interesting that in Amherst, they give the tree to the private landowner immediately, but in Northampton, they record the tree as a public tree and they record it in the deed.
I know. I had discussions with both tree wardens and the towns before we wrote this and came to the conclusion that that's too risky because if there's an accident, right,
So,
it's gonna be the
that
town.
was my only concern in there was because it's such a hot topic.
For us, it's the lowest priority planting would be on private property, but yet there are no tree belts, for example, in Lake Pleasant. So if you hope to plant trees in Lake Pleasant, you're talking private property
Okay.
to begin with.
Anybody else have any other comments?
Yeah, I just wanted
I
to.
do. I got a question I didn't hear brought up. Let's say we have the opposite of what we're talking about. A tree is 15 or 20 years old on private property, planted by the town. Now the owner or a new owner doesn't like the tree is not sick, and they cut it down. Or they want it, have you thought about that?
That's why we would regard that as the lowest priority preference for us is to plant on private property. You get a new owner, they own the tree, they can cut it down. So it's not a good investment of public funds, except there are areas where there are no tree belts. Miller's Falls is a good example.
Unless we decide to take ownership of it
Yeah.
over its life as if it were planted on a tree belt, which is a discussion that
The committee felt no.
I
Yeah.
tend to
Okay.
agree with that.
Fine, thank you.
And
Okay.
I was just looking at the schedule of fines and fees here
Yeah.
and trying to figure out who's going to enforce it.
Well, like many other fines and fees in the town of Montague, maybe it's just good to have a list of it so that we can point to it. We regard this document as an educational document. And if people feel it's okay to nail a tag sale sign on a tree with a 10-penny nail, we don't really want to charge them $10 for each nail. We want to educate them that damages the tree and may shorten its life. So basically, we don't hope to get rich on the fines, Chris.
And there have been people that have cut down street trees for firewood, and they need to be punished for that.
People are feeling free to prune the tree in front of their house. I can give you an example a block from my house where that's happened recently, but it's not their tree to prune. So these bylaws, the fact that they don't exist allows a free-for-all with what's really a real significant public investment of 800 trees coming in the next 3 years. And we feel like the public hearing process in the villages is what we're really aiming for. And if people want to challenge the fee schedule, that's fine. Let's have the discussion.
Good. All right.
I got a copy of this.
Yes, please.
Yes.
And could we take a next step soon to set up hearings through the planning department?
That's Walter's
our
working on that, so he'll.
So hearings for the bylaws?
Yeah,
The bylaws, you mean.
yeah, the bylaws.
Yeah, I can provide support.
Because we don't want these just to rest now. We want to move them forward towards town meeting next year.
Okay.
And I do thank you for taking into account my red line version.
We did a lot of work
I did a
on it.
review and had a lot of changes. They accepted
We did a lot of work with Walter on this. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep. Thank you.
David?
We need a copy.
I think I ended up with two in my folder here, Jeff.
I did, I gave Jeff one.
Oh, did you?
Thank you.
I got two, too.
Yes. Okay, town admin business, change order for trolley.
Yes, so it turns out that marine varnish penetrates doorways and windows very effectively into professional office spaces. And so as the folks from Renaissance Builders were doing their scraping and sanding of all of the oak trim on the first level and preparing and doing some test sample areas with the marine varnish that's being applied, there was an immediate problem in terms of the workplace. And so we tried another strategy. It didn't work particularly well. And so we are now having to have the contractor come in on the weekend. Prevailing wage laws require that there's a differential for that. And so Chris Arlacano worked very closely, and he is our project supervisor, worked very closely with the folks at Renaissance Builders. We figured out approximately how much time it would take. They provided us with a full breakdown of the expense. And so you see the requested change order. This is change order number 2 for the Colley Opera Building repair, Renaissance Builders, for $2,662 for required performance of certain work on weekend.
Okay, and will they do anything for odor? I mean, will the offices be available to be open so they can be aired out, or?
They're having they're working in partnership with the management of the Center for Responsive Schools to make the situation as positive and workable as possible.
Okay, perfect.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve change order number 2. So look at the Colley, any other discussion?
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so let me know.
Sorry about that, Rich. I'll just note as well that you can expect to see the scaffolding and the scissor jack move from Avenue A to 3rd Street as that project moves forward, or sideways as it may be, this
Okay.
week.
What is their completion date?
We expect them to be completed on or around August 15th.
Okay, so about another month.
Yes.
Is part of their contract going to be dealing with the steps on the 3rd Street side of the building? I noticed driving
Yes.
by that they're deteriorated.
Yes.
Some of the treads, they're concrete or
Yes.
stones.
I know I believe they're going to be chipping that out and resurfacing those. They're also restoring all of the stone column facades
Right,
as
right.
part of this.
Okay, good. Okay, anything for the 48-hour that's come up that we need to deal with?
I have something.
Yes, Wendy?
We received today an invitation for you to walk in the Montague Old Home Days Parade on the 17th. It starts at 12:30. And Linda said if you'd like to, she'd like you to confirm with her that you're gonna be there.
That's the 17th of August, correct?
Sounds like a perfect,
I'm actually available for the first time in 10 years to do it.
There you
Usually we
go.
go on vacation that weekend.
good,
I'll be there.
All right.
I usually go too.
okay. All right, I'll find out, 17th, I think. I think I will be around.
So walking unit, line up by the ball field, directly across from the Montague Center School.
Okay.
Former.
Maybe I'll see if I can get a vehicle.
Very good.
Well, it's not very long, is it? It only goes from the ball field down to the center of town. We should be able to handle that.
I've walked it, I've rode it, I've driven it.
Okay,
So I'll send her
Sounds
an
great.
email, let her know you'll be
Yep.
a
there.
couple of us will do that.
I do have one other thing. Steve and Walter and I have been communicating in regards to the Route 63 and 47 intersection where we just had another incident this past week. Steve and Walter reached out to our colleagues at the FERCog,
Okay.
and I reached out to Representative Lay, and they have advised us of some different procedures we can take moving forward. So Walter is working on that, and at our next meeting 2 weeks from tonight, there will be more information. But
Right, good.
we wanted to, Steve and I wanted to let the board know that it's something we're definitely looking into more significantly.
I came upon the scene right after, and it was
63 and 47, the one you can't see.
yeah, well, where you turn off of Montague Center to go out to
Heading
Leverett.
towards North Lebanon.
Yes.
Yes.
Where you
exactly.
cross 63.
Yeah,
Yeah,
where you cross.
where there's limited sight distance.
It's a difficult spot to get out. I usually, I came upon that accident this weekend, just as, emergency services were arriving. And usually when I come out of there, I hug the edge of the road, because it's almost impossible to see
Yeah.
the cars. I mean, it's as bad as you roll your window down to listen
Yeah, you do.
to see if a car's coming. So
Especially
something
when you
should
want to go,
happen there, yes.
when you want to go north.
Yeah. No, we're not in a hurry, but we try to stay on.
As far as that parking
Yeah.
at Montague Center and the issues they're raising about that, it seems like an issue with the Grange, because they do park constantly on treatment. However, the people who came before you, I've forgotten what their actual name was, they're gonna bring people up from Brooklyn and all that stuff for Kathy's event.
Yes.
They seem to be pretty well staffed and pretty well organized. And it seems like if someone were to request that part of their procedure be to keep people from parking on the tree belt,
Well, it also
they might be willing to
coincides-
do that. They
It
have to-
coincides with Montague Old Home Days, and one might argue that they would be the ones more likely to park there as well. So I think we need to figure out a long-term solution.
I'm just saying for that particular day.
I do plan to send
You see
them
what I'm
to,
saying?
yeah.
They had a lot, they seem
Yeah,
awfully
I think,
well
I think we should, well, both to the Old Home Days group and Kathy, so that, because they're both having events,
Yeah.
and I mean, I know, I've probably parked on that tree belt myself when it comes to Montague Center to go to Old Home Days in one.
I think everybody does.
So, okay, thanks. All right, next we have an executive session under general law, chapter 30A, section 21A3, to discuss potential litigation concerning First Flight. Votes may be taken. We would expect to come out of this executive session only to adjourn our regular meeting, which is next scheduled for Monday, July 22nd.
Motion to go into executive session as the chair just announced.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Nelson, aye.
Not what I.
Kuklowitz, aye.
This is a taxation.